Okay, Madam Moderator, we are live.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight's open house is being conducted on the Zoom webinar platform and is scheduled from 7 to 9 p.m. My name is Stev Andis, and I'm the manager of planning for the town, and I'll be facilitating tonight's public open house. With me in attendance is Bruno Scopacasa, a senior development planner with the town, who is responsible for processing the applications and that we'll be discussing tonight. We also have John Greaves, the transportation supervisor with the town. From Ajax Council, we have Ward 2 Regional Councillor Sterling Lee, Ward 2 Councillor Ashmead Khan. We also have the applicants for the proposed development. Rad Vucicevic is the director from Medallion, and Anna Fagus is the development manager from Medallion. We also have some of their members from the consultation team. Scott Waterhouse, planning manager from GHD. Henry Burston, director of architecture from IBI. Kenneth Chan, vice president of Leah Consulting. And Jackie Vanderveld, principal from Land Art Design Landscape Architects. The town is in receipt of and currently reviewing official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications for lands on the north side of Roslyn Road between the Carruthers Creek and Audley Road, which along with supporting reports and studies have been posted on the town's IMO page. Tonight, we're going to start with a presentation from Bruno Scopacasa, who will provide an overview of the applications and explain the site context. This will be followed by a presentation from the applicant's consultants, who will present the proposed development. The purpose of tonight's open house is to give you another avenue to provide the town and the applicants with your feedback. We have received a number of comments already, and I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to provide those in advance of this open house. We've grouped those comments into common themes, and to address them after the presentations, Bruno Scopacasa and the applicants will read out the questions and provide responses. Following this, we'll open the floor up to any attendee who wants to speak to the proposed development. As attendees, your mics and cameras are automatically disabled. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand by using the hand icon at the bottom of the screen, and I will enable your microphone. When this happens, you'll receive a pop-up message advising you that you've been given permission to unmute. After you've spoken, I will disable your mic before moving on to the next speaker. Your video will remain disabled. For those who wish to speak, I will be limiting you to 5 minutes. To respect everyone's time and to get as many people as possible within the allotted time for this open house, I request that you do keep your comment as succinct as possible. I also ask that if your comment has already been raised and you are in the queue, that you please lower your hand, as we do have a number of attendees with us tonight. We are here to listen and record your feedback. And given that this open house is scheduled until 9 p.m., we will be recording your comments and only responding to comments that haven't already been answered. We also encourage you to type your comments by accessing the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, as we may not be able to get to everyone within the allotted time. Responses to comments that are typed into the Q&A will be provided in writing and posted on the IMO page. This is to use our time during the open house for people who wish to speak. We'll be gathering all of the typed comments from the Q&A for this and the other open houses on January 21st and 28th. We'll be grouping them into similar categories such as traffic and provide written responses that will be posted on the IMO page in February. Please note that this open house is being recorded and that it will be posted on the IMO page next week for those who were unable to attend. We will continue to accept your comments after this meeting, so please feel free to provide additional comments in writing on the IMO page or via email to Bruno. His email information is on the IMO page as well. So now we will start the open house by going to the presentations.
Good evening, everyone. And welcome to the Town of Ajax hosted virtual public open house for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Medallion Development Corporation in 2017 for lands located on the north side of Rosin Road between the Carruthers Creek and Audley Road. My name is Bruno Scopacasa, Senior Planner for the Town of Ajax. I will be providing an overview of the site and land use planning context, a brief history of the existing Castlefield subdivision to the north, general background on the current development applications filed by Medallion for the site, and an explanation of the planning process moving forward. The official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications are for the lands outlined in red on this image. The subject lands represent the last 4 undeveloped blocks within the Castlefields subdivision and have a total area of approximately 4.4 hectares or 10.9 acres. The subject lands are surrounded by the following land uses. To the north is the Castlefields residential subdivision consisting of single and semi-detached residential dwellings, community parks, and a future school site. Immediately to the east is Audley Road. Across Audley Road are lands designated rural area that are part of the Greenbelt. Immediately to the south is Rosin Road. Across Rosin Road is the Sundial Mulberry Meadow subdivision, consisting of single and semi-detached dwellings, back-to-back and street townhouses, community parks, and an elementary school. Immediately to the west is a stormwater management pond and the Carruthers Creek and associated valley lands that are designated environmental protection. In 1998 and 1999, Medallion filed a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications to permit the development of the Castlefield subdivision located at the northwest quadrant of Rosin Road and Audley Road. The proposal included approximately 850 single and semi-detached dwelling units, as well as the future development of 203 block townhouses or apartments on lands between Roslyn Road and Carberry, Mansbridge, Stiles, and Whitlock Crescents, from the Carruthers Creek tributary to the west and Audley Road to the east, along with park blocks, a school block, and public roads. The Castlefields draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications were approved by Council in 2002. Medallion purchased the 40-acre parcel of land south of the railway corridor, west of Audley Road, referenced on this image as Amolchuk, and incorporated these lands into the balance of the Castlefield subdivision through the submission of a separate draft plan of subdivision application. The proposal for these lands included approximately 135 single detached homes. The subdivision application was approved by Council in 2003. The town's 2000 official plan designated the subject lands as high, medium, and low density residential. These land use designations were identified through a secondary plan exercise in the mid-1990s and adopted into the Ajax District Plan in 1997. The town's official plan replaced the district plan. Under the town's current 2016 Consolidated Official Plan, the subject lands are designated high and medium density residential and are subject to Area-Specific Policy 6.2 of the official plan. Lands at the immediate corner of Audley Road and Roslyn Road were redesignated from low density to medium density residential in 2014 through the town's growth plan, known as Amendment Number 41 to the Ajax Official Plan. The high-density residential designation permits stacked townhouses, low-rise apartments, and other forms of multiple-unit housing within a density range of between 60 and 185 units per net hectare. The minimum building height is 4 stories, and the maximum is 15 stories. The medium density residential designation permits single and semi-detached dwellings, duplex, triplex, and fourplex dwellings, street and stacked townhouse dwellings, and low-rise apartments within a density range of 30 to 75 units per net hectare. The minimum building height is 3 stories and the maximum is 6 stories. Rosin Road is a local corridor. Therefore, official plan infill policies for lands along corridors are applicable. These policies allow buildings in the medium density residential designation to be developed up to 8 stories in height. The subject lands, which are outlined in red on this image, are zoned Residential Multiple 6 Zone, or RM6, and Neighborhood Commercial, or NC, and are subject to Exception 76 within the town zoning bylaw. The RM6 zone permits multiple attached dwellings or townhouses to a maximum height of 11 meters. Exception 76 permits the additional use of apartment buildings with a minimum building height of 6 stories and a maximum density of 60 units per net hectare. The NC zone permits the uses of a convenience store, daycare facility, dry cleaning depot, financial institution, a laundromat, library, office, personal service shop, and service and repair shop. The following reports and studies have been submitted in support of the development applications and are available for review on the town's IMO webpage. The town is anticipating to receive a resubmission consisting of updated plans and reports in February of this year. The resubmission material will be made available on the town's IMO webpage. Once the town has heard from the public and fully reviewed the development applications, a staff report containing recommendations will be forwarded to a future meeting of the town's Community Affairs and Planning Committee for their consideration. This meeting will also double as a statutory public meeting. Therefore, residents will be notified and given the opportunity to participate. That concludes my introductory presentation. Scott Waterhouse, Planning Manager at GHD, will now provide a presentation summarizing the development applications. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Waterhouse with the firm GHD. I am the planning consultant for Medallion Corporation regarding the proposed development site in the town of Ajax. Now, with me this evening to provide further details of the proposed development includes Mr. Henry Burston from IBI Group, the project architect, Ms. Jackie Vander Velde from Land Art Design, the project landscape architect, Mr. Kenneth Chan from Lee Consulting, the project transportation engineer, and also in attendance are Ms. Anna Fagus and Mr. Rad Vucicevic, representatives from Medallion Corporation. My presentation tonight will provide a brief overview of the development proposal and then expand on the land use planning policy context, which was referenced in the town planning staff presentation. A summary of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments necessary to permit the proposed development will be provided. Next slide, please. So the proposed development, located on the north side of Rosin Road and west of Audley Road, generally consists of 5 development blocks referenced on the master site plan seen on the screen as blocks A, B, C, D, and E. A 1 hectare central park block is also proposed between development block B to the west and Hilton Gate to the east. This park would be owned and maintained by the town of Ajax to provide additional recreation amenities for the neighborhood. Along the Rosin Road frontage, a total of 5 apartment buildings are proposed, essentially 1 apartment building in each development block. The apartment building in Block A, being the most westerly block west of Rushworth Drive, has a maximum height of 15 stories, while the remaining apartment buildings each have a maximum height of 8 stories. Of note, ground floor commercial uses are proposed for the apartment building in Block E, being the most easterly development block at Audley Road. The proposed development also includes 7 townhouse blocks, which front onto Carberry Crescent, Mansbridge Crescent, Stiles Crescent, and Whitlock Crescent to the north. The townhouse units have a height of 3 stories, and a total of 53 townhouse units are proposed. Now, further details of the proposed development and design will be provided later in our presentation. Next slide. Now, as referenced in the town's planning presentation, the subject lands are designated high-density residential and medium-density residential in the town of Ajax official plan. These designations permit residential development at higher densities and more intense residential built form along Roslyn Road. Per the town planning presentation, these land use designations along Roslyn Road have generally been in place in the town of Ajax official plan since 2000. Now, this slide illustrates the development blocks in the context of the Ajax official plan. And of note, development block A, being the most westerly block located between Rushworth Drive and the stormwater management pond, indicated with a reddish brown shading, is designated high density residential. Development blocks B, C, D, and E between Rushworth Drive and Audley Road, indicated with an orange shading, are designated medium density residential. Next slide. The high-density residential designation applicable to Block A permits a maximum density of 185 dwelling units per hectare, along with a minimum building height of 4 stories and a maximum building height of 15 stories. The permitted housing types in this designation include stacked townhouses, other forms of attached housing, and low-rise apartments. Next slide. Certain amendments to the Ajax official plan are necessary to permit the intended design for Block A. These amendments seek to increase the maximum permitted density to allow for the proposed number of apartment and townhouse dwelling units, add high-rise apartment and block townhouse dwellings as permitted housing types within the high-density residential designation, and permit a minimum building height of 3 stories as applicable to the townhouse block in Block A. Next slide. The medium density residential designation applicable to blocks B, C, D, and E permits a maximum density of 75 dwelling units per hectare, along with a minimum building height of 3 stories and a maximum building height of 8 stories. Permitted housing types in this designation include semi-detached dwellings, street townhouses, stacked townhouses, other forms of low-rise attached housing, and low-rise apartments. Next slide. Similar to Block A, certain amendments to the Town of Ajax official plan are necessary to permit the intended design for development blocks B, C, D, and E. These amendments seek to increase the maximum permitted density to allow for the proposed number of apartment and townhouse dwelling units, and add mid-rise apartment and block townhouse dwellings as permitted housing types in the medium density residential designation. Now, it is worth noting at this point that the proposed maximum apartment building heights for all development blocks, being 15 stories for Block A and 8 stories for the remaining development blocks, conforms with the Ajax official plan, and an amendment for maximum building height is not required. Next slide. Now, in addition to the amendments to the official plan that were just discussed, certain amendments to the Town of Ajax zoning bylaw are also necessary to permit the proposed development and implement official plan policies. As referenced by town planning staff in their presentation, development blocks A, B, C, and D have residential zoning, which permits both townhouses and apartment buildings. It's important to note that these zoning permissions have been in place since the early 2000s. Development Block E, being the most easterly development block, has a commercial zoning. This zoning permits a range of neighborhood-type commercial uses as summarized in the town planning presentation. The zoning, however, does not permit apartment units above ground floor commercial uses as is contemplated in the mixed-use building design for Block E. Next slide. An amendment to the Ajax zoning bylaw and the residential zone is required as applicable to development blocks A, B, C, and D to permit the intended design, permit the proposed number of dwelling units, establish site-specific parking standards, and establish certain performance standards, including standards for building setbacks to property boundaries and building height. Next slide. In addition, an amendment to the Ajax zoning bylaw and the commercial zone is required as applicable to development block E. This zoning amendment is required to permit the proposed building height, introduce apartment units above ground floor commercial uses, and also establish certain performance standards, including those for building setbacks to property boundaries. This concludes the planning policy, official plan, and zoning bylaw context discussion. Mr. Henry Burston, project architect with IBI Group, will now provide additional development details and information.
Thank you, Scott. Firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules to attend this open house. It's a bit of a new format for us, so we appreciate your patience and understanding as we pre-record this presentation for multiple nights. I've been working with Medallion Developments for a number of years, and they have a 60-year history. We built a number of successful projects together, including 45 Lisker, which you can see on the bottom left, and Finch and Weston, which you can see on the bottom right, and as well as Vision at Pat Bailey Square, which introduced a major piece of public realm for the community. And we're really, really proud of that project. You can also see generally the high quality of the interiors as well as the exterior through these slides. Medallion fulfills a need for rental in areas with multiple demographics, whether you're a student empty nester or a family. Historically, we've seen a pattern that the residents of future buildings like this come from close proximity within a few kilometers away. So ultimately, the residents will directly be from your current community. Also, with Medallion being a rental, they will have a vested interest in the area for a long time. Here you can see our site within the overall context. It's a linear site running along Roslin Road. To the immediate north, there are low-rise residential. We have agricultural lands to the east, and to the south, there's medium density, which was built into a lower form. The other item that I want to call your attention to is the existing infrastructure that reaches basically from the elementary school site to the north, Castlefield Park, and works its way down to Sundial Park, the school, and then Lexington Park. And this really represents a series of nodes, and it almost acts like a necklace of parks that run north-south through the community, with one obvious noticeable gap being our proposed site. So this is kind of some of the idea of how we decided to place the site with direction from the city in the middle of our development to help facilitate that as a kind of growing spine through the community. This shows a number of photographs of the area. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you all live here and know your community well. The only thing I will highlight is that we recognize that there are low-rise community and homes to the north, which we want to be sensitive to. And we do want to build on the Hilton Gate Parkette and other infrastructure in the area with our development. The site has been redesigned. It's still organized into 5 development blocks running from A to E. But we have introduced a major piece of public realm to the neighborhood with a 1 hectare, 2.5 acre park in the center of the development. The buildings are positioned to create a consistent pedestrian edge with the mid-rise buildings and density mainly focused along the south edge, along Roslin. And the heights of the buildings, as Scott described, are all 8 stories, with the exception of one 15-story building in the west side of the site. The entire north frontage beside the neighborhood has been proposed as townhouses, and we are actually seeking a variance to make these lower than the permitted height of 4 stories in the area. Overall, the master plan is proposing 1,322 units with 950 square meters of commercial space, which is going to be on the ground floor of Building E. Each one of the development blocks has a vehicular access off a north-south road, either oddly or these connecting streets, which lead to vehicular drop-offs at the rears of the building and connect to ramps and loading areas. So all the garbage, all the ramps, all of that functional aspects of the building will be enclosed within the buildings, and that will hide them from view, and also will deal with all the acoustic issues. The parking for the building will be primarily located below grade, with 260 visitor cars being provided for the entire development. There's also going to be opportunities to allow for bikes and alternative modes of transportation. And we're allowed for mid-block connections to happen through the site between C and D and along the park itself. You can see the red arrows here, which indicate potential entrances to the residential lobbies. And we expect that there's going to be amenity spaces and grade-related units along all of the ground floors. Here you can see a number of sections that we've cut through the site, through various parts of the site, and a diagonal line which indicates a 45-degree angular plane from the low-rise community to the north. That's essentially used as a tool by planners and architects to transition buildings to low-rise neighborhoods. And in its simplest form, it basically says that you're going to set back the building for the same amount of distance as you're going to have as building height. For all of the buildings that you see here, we actually meet or exceed this standard. And in many cases, just about every block, we have about 46 to 57 meters, so 150 to 188 feet from the north or community. And for Building E, which is the closest one, we're at 65 feet, but we also have a heavily terraced top to the building. This is a rendering of Block A and Block B. We've introduced a pedestrian scale podium with precast masonry and brick above. A very elegant palette of colors and materials are proposed for all the facades, which are high quality. The streets are lined with trees. There are manicured front yards and entrances, creating eyes on the street, promoting a safe neighborhood. The corners of the site will become features of the building as well. And you can see blocks C and D as well. We want to continue that consistent aesthetic, tying the neighborhood together, with the mid-rise forming a consistent street wall. On the north end of the development, what you see here are the townhouses, each having individual yards. There's no driveways, no parking in front of these, just lush landscaping. All of that is happening below grade for the parking. And here's another view, which is showing the park, which will essentially be the heart of the development. And you can see our buildings in the background. Jackie Vanderveld will outline the various proposed opportunities, both passive and active. And we'd very much like to get the community's input and feedback on that. And I'm going to pass the presentation on to Jackie.
Thank you, Henry. As Henry mentioned, we did a master plan of landscape for the site. We lined the streets with the trees, These would be native trees and plantings that start to manage stormwater management or stormwater during the excessive rains. They would help to shade the streets in the summertime, but allow the warm sun in the winter to go through them. We're going to start by showing you a series of other Ajax parks and how they relate in size to our Central Park. Our Central Park was chosen so that it does create the green link that Henry talked about with the parks to the north and the south. So the first comparison is Imagination Park. It's a park of similar size, south of Williamson's Drive East. It's north of our site. It has large open lawns, but not much beyond that. Not a lot of trees and not a lot of activities. Next one. The second example is Todd Hunter Park. This is west of our site. It's similar in size to our park again. Similar in that it has shade trees and a playground. However, there are no sports courts in there. Number 3 is Sundial Playground. Okay. Sorry, I missed Castle. Yeah, we'll go to Sundial Playground. This is off for Formosa Avenue, just south of our site again. Large open lawns, but it lacks a lot of shade to play in. And it has no sports courts. Lexington Park is our final example. A little bigger than our site, but very similar once again. It is south of Sundial Park. It has a couple of sports courts like ours, you'll see in a minute. Some trees, but not quite as many as you'll see in ours. Next, Henry. And this is the site plan, the concept plan of our site. You'll see there are a lot of trees on the site. It's kind of divided 50-50, with active play being half of it and passive play being the other half. Multiple walking routes throughout, sports courts, as well as open lawns for play. Styles Crescent is along the north side and Roslyn Road East is along the south side of the park. Next. The two halves of the park can be split pretty much in half. The western half on the left or the active play, and the right half being the passive play on the east side. The park is about 128 meters by 75 meters. That translates to 2.4 acres, so very good size. Next. On the west side, some of our active amenities and sports there include the tennis court, basketball courts, and pickleball. Pickleball is something that's growing in popularity, and so we thought we would bring it to you in this park for you to enjoy. Next. The southwest corner includes amenities of the bocce ball courts, shuffleboard, outdoor chess, and table tennis. So multiple activities for multiple people. There'll be a lot of people in this neighborhood and around, and we want to serve everybody equally. Next. The west side also contains some open active play for children. So we're serving everybody of all ages. This one includes open playgrounds, sandbars, and then some interactive play equipment. Next. And the last two slides show you the east side, where we'll have a lot of trees, open lawns, places where you can have picnics. We have introduced a toboggan hill as well for the young children in that neighborhood. And final slide. The northeast corner shows an area where we have an off-leash fenced-in dog park, as well as an outdoor fitness zone. So I'll now pass it on to Kenneth Chan, Transportation Engineer.
And thank you. My name is Kenneth Chen. I work for Lee Consulting. I'm the traffic consultant that prepared a traffic impact study in support of the application. I just want to, what we have in front of us is a transportation network for the subject area. As Jackie pointed out, a lot of you are from the neighborhood and you're very well familiar with this area. But what I want to highlight on this particular slide is the blue line that's in front of us that shows the transit line of 916. One thing of note is that right now we know it operates on around a 15 minutes headway during peak hour, and through the town's official plan, it's going to be upgraded to or designated, I should say, for 10-minute service. And that's something that's very important because it's a way for people to commute and to travel around the site in this area on a different manner. The yellow lines are the cycling network, as you can see, and oddly there's a shared bike lane that goes from Taunton down to Kingston. So we just want to highlight that this area does have alternative mode of access, but a mode of travel, I should say, but predominantly it is auto centric and focused. You can see on the bottom right now, that's the existing condition of Roslyn, and I believe, as most of you are aware, there's an ongoing environmental assessment for Roslyn, which the city will speak to in more detail. Next slide, please. On this particular slide, I just want to highlight how people currently travel in this actually particular area. There is a 15% of what we call modal split dependency on transit during the morning peak hour, and of course, predominantly, as I discussed earlier, you're looking at 78% single occupancy and 7% passenger. So it's what I would describe is that this is a typical suburban type traveling characteristic. With it, however, we do see a higher spike of transit on a normal subdivision or with sites that have less or less desirable transit service. You would see the transit at around 5% modal split, and we are seeing 15. One of the key thing is that from this particular site, we are expecting to generate in the order of 700 to 830 trips during the peak hour for the proposed development. And on the next slide, we'll talk about how they actually get off and onto the road network. Next slide, please. As pointed out by Henry on his plans, the main access for Block A and B is through Rushworth Drive. And you can see the driveway and the site design is laid out such that it's we're creating an internal road network parallel to the existing local roads. And in our opinion, this would help direct traffic directly onto Roslyn. And this applies also for Block C, D, and E. It's developed an internal driveway system that links the parking directly onto Hilton, which then brings you directly onto Roslyn. And of course, the Block E also have a direct access onto Audley. In our opinion, the way that the site is laid out and designed, it's allowed drivers to directly go onto Roslyn. We do understand that there is some concern with respect to cut through or what we call infiltrate traffic through Rushworth. There are ways to mitigate that type of undesirable traffic pattern, and through our study, we could identify such restrictions such as left turn restrictions or right turn restrictions during peak hour, so that drivers from the future or the proposed development will not create undesirable conditions through the neighborhood. Furthermore, one thing that of note is the traffic pattern along Roslyn is being looked at. We have previously conducted traffic impact study. We are currently working both with the town of Ajax and as well as the region of Durham to investigate traffic and how the traffic from these blocks will impact Roslyn at Salem and Roslyn and Audley. One key thing that I do want to point out is that despite the fact our traffic study was conducted prior to the Amazon site at the southeast corner of Salem and Roslin, it is our understanding that the Amazon traffic study has accounted for the traffic generated by this particular site. So therefore, the conclusion that we have reached, that we have looked at in terms of traffic impact, is considered from a townwide perspective, and my understanding is that it is definitely a traffic input into the analysis that's being undertaken for the environmental assessment as to what type of upgrades shall be looked at for Roslin. And of note is that in the official plan, it does, in the transmission master plan for the town of Ajax, it does highlight that Roslin will be widened to 4 lanes, and that is something that is still being planned. This is a brief overview of our traffic impact study and the traffic work that is being considered for this site. And this concludes the applicant's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruno, Scott, Henry, Jackie, and Kenneth for those presentations. Now I'll hand it back to Bruno and the applicants to address the comments that we received in advance of this open house.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending. We did get numerous submissions through our IMO page with questions and comments, and I've been able to gather most of them together and string about 14 kind of common or popular themes with concerns and questions, and we're hoping to answer some of those here today. So the first question is, Medallion did not disclose or tell purchasers that these lands would be developed as currently proposed. Sales office representatives advised purchasers that the lands would be developed for townhouses. Purchasers are upset and feel that Medallion lied to the purchasers. So I'm going to turn that over to representatives from Medallion to address.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Bruno. In order to address this comment, I'd just first like to say that Medallion values its relationship with tenants and homeowners, and it was never our intent for Medallion to mislead purchasers. Since the subdivision was approved to the north in the early 2000s, the local context for this subject lands has since evolved. And while medium density forms such as townhouses may have been contemplated at the time, over the last several years, planning policies through all levels of government have actually encouraged higher density built forms to be built along major arterial roads and transit corridors, such as this site along Roslin Road. So in keeping with these policy directions, which support intensification, we now have a proposal for a more optimal and efficient use of land and municipal infrastructures and services.
All right, thank you, Anna. Question number 2, the proposed development will increase traffic in an area that is already experiencing high volumes of traffic and delays. We understand that an update to the traffic impact study will review the anticipated increase of traffic from the proposed development, and it's expected the impact on the surrounding road network will be looked at. The updated report will be reviewed by both the town and the regional municipalities' transportation staff. Question number 3, the submitted traffic impact study is outdated and does not account for traffic volumes from new area developments such as Gordon Foods and Amazon. We're very well aware of this, and so is the applicant. The previously submitted traffic study is outdated and requires to be updated. The revised traffic study will include the background traffic from all background developments in the area, including Gordon Foods and Amazon. Question number 4. Traffic on Rosin Road and Audley Road are already an issue, How will Rosin Road support the increased traffic from this development? In order to accommodate the growth throughout the corridor, the town of Ajax identified a need to widen Rosin Road from 2 to 4 lanes in the town's 2019 Integrated Transportation Master Plan. The environmental assessment and preliminary design for this widening is currently underway and will be completed in the spring of 2021. The town is currently targeting commencement of construction of the widening in 2024. Should the traffic from this development trigger the need for additional road improvements, the developer will be required to identify and fund the improvements. Question number 5. How will traffic infiltration in the Castlefield subdivision be prevented from the proposed development? Now, the Medallion's transportation consultant has already touched on this, but the revised traffic impact study that is forthcoming will include an assessment of the proposed trip generation of the proposed development and will demonstrate traffic infiltration and what needs to be done to mitigate these measures. Question number 6. When will Rosin Road be widened? Are there other area road improvements scheduled or required to support the proposed development? As already noted, the need to widen Roslyn Road has already been identified by the town. Should the proposed development require additional road improvements, they will be the responsibility of the developer and identified in the forthcoming revised traffic impact study. Question number 7. The proposed parking supply is not enough. What is the proposed parking supply? How will residents and visitors to the development be prevented from parking on the streets of the existing Castlefield subdivision? The proposed parking supply is 1 parking space per dwelling unit for residents and 0.2 parking spaces per dwelling unit for the exclusive use of visitors. Because the proposal consists of rental units, future tenants will be advised of the parking supply by the property management company. If 1 parking space is not enough for the tenant, then they will have to move on and choose another development or rental apartment that offers more parking. Nothing will prevent future tenants from parking or visitors from parking on municipal streets. Municipal bylaws only permit parking during daytime hours for a maximum of 3 hours in any permitted space, and overnight parking is not permitted. Question number 8. What is the justification for rental apartments in this area? Why rental apartments and not condominiums? Will the apartment units be offered as social housing or rent geared to income? I'm going to direct that question to representatives from Medallion to answer.
Thanks, Bruno. I will endeavor to answer it in multiple comments here. Medallion is a purpose-built rental builder, and it is our intention to provide existing and future residents of the area with greater housing choice. And this proposal will contribute high-quality units in an area where there's limited rental housing options. It is especially important to have housing options for individuals at different stages of life. For example, we've had in many of our previous projects in Ajax that it's not only singles or families, but it's also retirees who are choosing to downsize from their home but still wishing to be part of the community, and they already live in it. So they want to age in place where they could be close to their grandkids, their kids and friends, and community amenities that they've been accustomed to. I'd also like to add that rental buildings that are built today have evolved from their dated reputation. And now that there's many of these same services and amenities, if not more than in certain condominiums. And this development and Medallion's developments will always have high quality buildings with long-lasting finishes, and it is in our interest and everyone's interest to have a better, efficient, well-built building, because it is it's our long-term investments, and we want to be part of the community. I just also, maybe I should further clarify apartments versus condo of one of the questions. And the defining difference between condo and apartment is not necessarily the built form, but the tenure, meaning that a rental building is owned by Medallion, one company, whereas a condominium is owned by individual unit owners. And the difference is Medallion will be owning and controlling the property, and it provides typically it provides more control of a building, especially when it comes to who can live and access the building. As you know, there's a lot of cases in the news recently about Airbnbs being part of a problem in condominiums because there's absentee landlords. Whereas in our particular case, we're invested in our buildings, and we have control of access and who's living in them. And I just like to lastly mention, to answer the last question, is that Medallion's business model is to build market rental housing. However, we understand, though, that through our experience on recent development projects across the GTA, that affordable housing can become a component in all types of developments in redevelopment projects, not just apartments, but it could be condos. And this has led to, typically by government initiatives. So we are going to continue to have discussions with the town to determine if there is a desire to include any component of affordable units in one of these projects. Thanks, Bruno.
Thank you, Anna. Let's move on to now question number 9. What types of commercial or rental stores will be incorporated as part of the development? The commercial uses are unknown at this time. The development may include neighborhood level commercial uses, such as daycare, restaurant, office, bank, all uses to serve and provide amenities to the local community. These uses are similar to those currently permitted under the neighborhood commercial zone. Question number 10. The lands appear to be too narrow to support the proposed buildings and townhouses. How will these lands support the proposed development? I believe this was demonstrated through the presentation delivered by Medallion's architect. There is an appropriate amount of land to accommodate the future development as depicted in the presentation. Question number 11. What aspects of the plan will be eco-friendly, helping to reduce the carbon footprint or pollution? I'm going to direct that question to Medallion.
Thanks, Bruno. High density, by its nature of having multiple units on properties, is the most dramatic or application of reduction in carbon footprint. And these buildings, as all of Medallion buildings, will feature high efficiency mechanical equipment and energy efficient envelopes, and for building envelopes, and also with tree planting and plants will also enhance the existing conditions and air pollution concerns.
Thank you, Anna. Question number 12. The proposed development will devalue our homes. It is our understanding that the future development of these lands would be well designed, well built, and well maintained. And we feel that any development on this site would have to meet those standards in order to contribute to the validity and the vibrancy of the community. Question number 13. The high density development will have a negative effect on the quality of living in this neighborhood. This development will increase pollution and crime in the area. The town does not support the notion that compact urban development degrades livability standards. I'm going to direct a part of this, addressing this question to Medallion.
Yeah, thanks, Bruno. as rental owners and as long-term owners and operators of rental buildings and development, Medallion remains committed to maintaining a safe and welcoming place for people to call home. We rent to, it's a constant desire to attract people to live in safe environments and to create home environments that people desire to live in. And as your neighbor, we will continue to work closely with the community on an ongoing basis to ensure that this remains a sought after place to live and a community that is maintains its desirability.
Thank you, Anna. Now on to the last question, number 14. The proposed development is not compatible with the existing Castlefield subdivision. The town's official plan policies contemplates a compact and more dense development on these lands, which are adjacent to arterial roads. Compatibility of this type of development with the balance of the area has already been studied through the review of the town's official plan. The town's official plan has additional policies in place, such as setting buildings below a 45-degree angular plane, measured from the property line of the nearest low-density residential area to further ensure compatibility. In addition, the concept plan provides for a transition from taller buildings placed along Rosin Road and the 3-story townhouses along the north end of the site that are in closer proximity to the 2-story existing homes in the neighborhood. This transition was demonstrated through the cross-section images that were provided by Medallion's architect. So that concludes the questions and comments that we've heard through our IMO page.
Thank you, Bruno and Anna, for addressing those questions. We're now going to open it up to attendees for comments. As I mentioned, if you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand button and I will unmute you in the order that your hand was raised. And I'll also remind everyone that comments can also be typed into the Q&A page. But if time allots, we will go to the Q&A page. But the priority is for people who are speaking. So I see some hands up. The first person is Usama. So I am going to unmute you. Sorry, there we go. You now can unmute yourself, Usama, and you can.
Good evening. I'm a resident here in Castlefields on Styles Crescent, in fact. A few questions, I guess, for the senior planner. He mentioned that the doubling of Roslyn Road would be commencing in 2024. That's still 4 years away. I'm wondering what the completion date of this project would be, because that's still quite some time before we would have some sort of traffic relief. That's sort of my first question. And then I had a few comments after that, if they could address that.
Sure. Thank you for your question. The widening of Roslyn, although it's, our targeted date is to begin in 2024, the whole purpose of the widening is to deal with the additional traffic volumes that are being already recognized on Roslyn. And the traffic study that was submitted already speaks to the timing of development of these buildings because of the current limited capacity on Roslyn Road. So based on the study that we currently have in our hands, the 15-story building that's at the very west limit of the site would be supported by the current road network and how Roslyn is currently built. Beyond that, the road would have to be widened. So there's a trigger there for the other development, the other buildings to come online and be developed once Roslin widening has been completed. The other aspect here is we're dealing with an official plan amendment and rezoning applications. If these applications are approved, there's still further approvals that are required before actually putting a shovel in the ground and commencing construction. And each of these blocks or properties along this stretch would have to get site plan approval. And that approval can run anywhere from 8 months to 12 months, and sometimes longer, depending on the complexity. And only after obtaining site plan approval would a full building permit be issued by the municipality.
Okay. So that clarifies a little bit. So I'll try to sort of do a little rapid fire and get as many thoughts as I have on this proposed project out as I can. As far as the parking is concerned, we already see a lot of on-street parking within the neighborhood. Having so many buildings on site, most of these apartments are going to be, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, perhaps apartments, kind of like the ones that are on in South Ajax on Bailey. It's difficult to foresee everyone just having one vehicle in those units. So I don't see how one parking space per unit would suffice. You're going to run into a problem where people are going to be parking in our neighborhoods. They're going to be cutting through. And again, that's one element. As far as affordable housing, based on the rental prices in South Ajax, they don't seem to be affordable housing at all. Having said that, if you actually just read through the comment section of that development or of those buildings, you kind of see some of the problems, and it might be of the property management company, I don't know, but where people consistently complain, because I know individuals that live in that building, they talk about how there is the smell of urine and a lot of unsightly stuff in terms of the tenants not being vetted and things not working. So it's not to say that tenants are not vetted, but we already see an uptick in crime happening in Ajax, and having these high-rise buildings would only add to that, especially now that you have so much commercial construction taking place here in North Ajax. You have the Amazon warehouse. They're going to be filling in thousands of jobs there. And so individuals that are going to be perhaps working there are going to be looking for rental places. And again, it's going to add congestion. It's going to add possibly crime. And home value, let's say home value doesn't drop, but the quality of life is definitely going to drop here, because you're going to be, looking at the presentation, when you look at, just a little bit of that green space or that park, there's going to be so much, especially in an age of COVID now, and sort of life sort of being altered for the foreseeable future, such a high density population living in such a small area, it just doesn't make sense in this stretch of Roslin Road. I'm not opposed to this development occurring, but perhaps in another area, it doesn't make sense to happen. It doesn't make sense for it to occur in this sort of stretch of land. Those are some of the thoughts that I have. Traffic, crime, pollution, parking, and factoring in all the other development that's taking place on Roslin. It just feels like overkill right now.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to be muting your microphone and moving on to the next in line. And next we have Tushar. I am going to unmute.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks. So this question is to Bruno. The transportation impact study is December 2016. arborist study is dated November 25, 2016. The shadow study is as of September 2010. The question that I have, although you guys have mentioned that the studies would be done, question is, are all these studies going to be redone, or only the transportation study is going to be redone? And after February, I think that's what you said, by Feb end, all these revised studies are going to come is going to be completed. What's the process after that for public to raise their opinions? And what's the process from the town's end to provide the approval to the project? So if you can talk about timelines of the study, all of them are going to be done or not, and what's the process ahead?
Thank you, Tushar. Medallion is well aware that all the plans and studies need to be updated, and there needs to be a resubmission so that both the town and the regional municipality has an opportunity to further review their proposal, because it has changed from the first submission. So there's still a review process moving forward on the application. The timeline is based on our review and dealing with all the issues at hand that we're hearing from residents and through the review of these reports. As I mentioned in my presentation, we staff, once we're fully have reviewed the application, we will be bringing a staff report to our Community Affairs and Planning Committee for their consideration. And that meeting will double as a statutory public meeting, and residents will be notified and given another opportunity to participate, much like tonight. And at that meeting, you will have all the committee members present, and you can address questions and comments to them. And the Community Affairs and Planning Committee is made up of all of council.
Thank you, Bruno. Tushar, I have muted you, and we're going to move on to the next speaker. Mark.
Okay. Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you. I just had a quick question. Sorry, Mark's my husband, so it's his name showing up.
Okay.
It seems to me that the focus of the presentation tonight and a lot of the things I've read online and et cetera, really have been on the Castlefield side of the development. But I'm a resident on the Sundial side of Roslin, and in fact, our home backs onto Roslin. And we will actually look directly at the development and specifically the proposed high-rise building. So I would very much like to know what the proposal is for the Roslin side of the development and how the high-rise, and I mean really as well as the widening of Roslin itself, will affect those who currently live on the other side of Roslin. So like, will we be facing, for example, a huge wall? Will the building be graded back from our side of the road? Because like, for example, my bedroom looks right out on it, right? And in terms of the road, will it be widened on both sides? Is it only being widened on one side? Will we be looking at the road basically being pulled up to our front doors? These are some of the questions that we have.
Okay, I'm going to direct that question to Henry to deal with kind of the streetscape or urban design component, and then possibly to John with regards to the widening of Roslin and the detailed design.
Thank you. I think every effort we've made on the project has been to create a more urban edge for Roslin. And there are setbacks from our building to the property line of about 10 feet. As well as the boulevard itself. And those are all the renderings that you saw actually were along Roslin Road. So we had one rendering which was actually at the intersection between Block A and Block B. We also had another rendering that was block C and D. So everything that you saw there was essentially like if you were standing a little bit further back, almost from where it sounds like your home is, with the buildings in perspective. The idea really is to try to create a bit of a front door onto those streets, create activated street frontage, and allow. I talked about this concept of eyes on the street, which really is allowing people to have front yards, individual entrances, which we think promotes more safety for the area. And what we really want to do is create an area that's a lot more pedestrian friendly than it is now, and obviously focus on having that central park as one of the features that helps tie the whole development together. And maybe I can pass it on to Ken or the town to talk about the nature of the widening itself.
I would be happy to make a comment on that. So the proposed widening for Roslin Road is what we call a center line widening. So the widening would occur on both sides of the road. As you've heard this evening, moving from a 2-lane to a 4-lane cross section. The town is currently completing our environmental assessment and preliminary design for the road. There will be another public open house where we present the preferred preliminary design to the public. It is coming up in early February. I encourage all who want to participate to come out that evening once it has been scheduled. But yes, it would be centralized widening with active transportation facilities on both sides of the road, and other space for boulevard features such as lighting and other elements.
Thank you for that. Next up to speak is Andrew. Andrew, you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So perfect. So first, a quick thanks to, of course, Medallion, ICI, and the town for supporting. Sorry. For supporting the project and presenting it as such. Bruno, I guess some initial observations. This seems, I'd say, somewhat of a premature discussion, even as per your own admission. There's lots of work to do. There's lots of roads to build. There's lots of studies that we need to redo. So I guess, my initial first comment is that why the big push now to look to get amendments to property setbacks? Why the big push now to get a project approved when there's still many feasibility pieces that we need? I guess my initial fear is that we're going to go so far in this project, and even if we find something in the future, we've gone too far and the project's already too far down the road. But I guess what I'd start with Medallion, I hear, lots of excitement, lots of, interesting pictures, ICI, the same thing, lots of nice parks. What I don't see is Medallion, I guess the troubled past that I think arguably that you've had. Bleeman Holdings that operates a number of Medallion properties, they're run down, they're in facing litigation. How do we know that, you won't turn your back on this asset and sell this asset to someone else in the future? And would you be willing to, put a financial commitment on the line to avoid you from doing that? Because I guess what my concern with Medallion is that although it might not be your intent to do that, you certainly don't mind changing your mind after the fact. And we talk about, a safe and welcoming place to go home. My initial comment again to that is, how do the residents of 650 Parliament feel when they are forced to leave their home for more than a year? What I'm very concerned with is that your corporation has a very troubled past, and I'm looking to see if you can guarantee that that will not happen again in North Ajax.
Thank you, Andrew, for your comment.
And I have, I know that was a question of Medallion as well, and I do have a series of other questions that I'd like covered as well. Thank you.
I mean, I'll just let Medallion obviously answer, but the property that you're referring to in Parliament, that is not Medallion's property.
And
that's not Medallion's in Medallion's holdings. So you're mistaken that is not a Medallion property.
I understand it's not Medallion, but it is owned by Bleeman Holdings, which is the owner of Medallion, who owns that holding company. So that's why I kind of mention it, because it does have a direct connection to the ownership of Medallion Corporation.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I am going to put you on mute because we do have a lot of.
And I think I had 5 minutes though. If it's okay, I'm going to continue. So, and this is, I guess, my initial observation to ICI. You know, I see lots of good things like pickleball courts, but you know, what we all look at that, and if we study that drawing, is that, you know, ICI, you had mentioned that there's a 10-foot property setback. Like, I don't know about any of you, but I wouldn't want my children playing pickleball 10 feet from Roslin Road. And I know we've drawn that picture to look like it's a very supportive piece, but that's an area that's 10 feet from the road. It's going to be littered with trucks, littered with thousands of cars increasing to this area. I don't think that is something that we can really show that way. And I think it's almost disingenuous to kind of sell it that way. You talk about traffic mitigation for keeping traffic away from the subdivision, and such as a left turn restriction. And much the same, we implemented a strategy like that at the Tim Hortons that's right at the corner of this very same area at Salem and Roslin. What we see there is people don't listen to the left turn restrictions. And I could tell you on an average, once every 2 weeks, there's a traffic accident at that location. And again, that's something that I don't want, right where you're proposing to have this park with a pickleball court 10 feet away from Roslin Road. Again, I don't know about you, but that's not something that would be supportive for me. Town of Ajax, I'm surprised to see, you know, a bit of this justification for changing the zoning, and you'll have to bear with me, I didn't quite understand it, but from RM6 to RM4, or there was a 1,300 unit limit across a 4 or 5 hectare area. I guess my question is there even a need for this high density residential in this area? I know Medallion had previously been approved to build 6 towers at Pat Bailey. 2 are built and they're not fully tenanted either. So is there a real genuine need for this type of housing in North Ajax, where we're willing to sacrifice the safety, the traffic of so many things when there's so much work that we haven't done to date? Why are we looking to consider this right now when we do not have answers to those questions? And I guess my final piece, and I appreciate you working with me on this one, but when we talk about, you know, this is just an initial step before we go down a path, what is to stop developers, stop the town, stop anyone who has a vested interest in seeing this property go through? What's to stop us seeing a ministerial zoning order to bypass all of these requirements that are built into this process? Because I can tell you, you know, looking at Carruthers Creek and some work that's happening in North Pickering and Ajax, I'm worried about that project because that's something that's impacting this water flow area as well, where there was an intent to pass a ministerial zoning order to bypass all of this great work that we're trying to be here and protect. And I don't know what the status of that is, and I think it's still in study, but that's what I'm kind of worried about. So I really appreciate the presentation from everyone here, but I think we all need to take a step back and take the flash out of all of this, take away the nice fancy drawings and really focus on what it is that you're looking at to do. And we need to study this before we make the commitment to a developer who, I understand that it's not Medallion, but who has a direct working relationship with Medallion, who has a history of some pretty nasty things. And I don't want to see that in my development, in my front yard, looking back at my backyard. And I bought into this a certain way. Medallion, you didn't answer this question yet, but what's to stop you from doing this? Because again, it wasn't your intent to do that. It wasn't your intent to mislead selling of townhouses here, but you did it anyway. And that's what we're here to protect. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew, for your feedback. Next person with their hand up is Amelia.
Hi there, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just have a couple questions. In your presentation, I noticed that in 2014, the density changed from low to medium. Is that true?
That occurred at the basically the block that's right at the corner of Roslin and Audley at the northwest corner.
And was the community aware of this?
Yeah, that occurred through the review of our official plan, dealing with the growth plan that came down from the province. So when we, the municipality, conduct a comprehensive review of our zoning of our official plan, we have a public process during that review. So notices would have gone in the local paper, on our town webpage, and we
But
would
were
have,
residents mailed letters regarding this?
no, we don't. To mail a letter to everyone in the municipality would be very costly, but we use other avenues to get the message out.
Well, unfortunately, I did not get the message. And it doesn't take that much to have the people of Castle Fields notified. I know that it was in newspapers and it was on websites, but I just feel that was kind of done behind our back. Also, I have a question for Medallion. So Medallion, my question to you is, you kind of put the blame, or how you say it, when you were asked why the residents are so upset with Medallion, the first-time home buyers were promised verbally that the area would have been built for luxury townhomes and semis. I have 3 articles from newspapers that state this, and it's supposed to be a luxury area. But then, you know, times changed and projects changed, politics changed, but you didn't answer the question. So my question to you is, why are you dismissing a verbal agreement to the people from Castle Fields? You haven't answered that question. So we have over 70 first-time home buyers here stating that Medallion, some representative there, said the area was going to be used for that purpose, semis and luxury townhomes. Can you answer that for me, please?
I'll answer, Anna. Amelia. Yeah, so when development happens, that was proposed a long time ago, and I'm not gonna. I mean, whatever the representative told you on the site, I don't think it was intended to mislead. The site has always been zoned mixed for that use as well as higher uses. And as things develop, it's like I said, it's been over time. Things develop, things change, plans change, demographics change, marketing changes, everything changes. The area's been growing a lot more faster than anybody anticipated. It would be underutilizing the site if we continue just to ignore what's happening on Rosin Road or other parts of the city and arterial roads. This is almost policy from the higher levels saying you must provide housing, you must intensify arterial roads for housing reasons and for efficiency reasons and so forth. We can't ignore what's happening here, and that this area is growing. Not just this area, but a lot of areas are growing. This is happening all over the place, not just on Rosin Road.
Okay, I understand that, but what I'm saying is people who invested their life savings into homes, into Castle Fields, we were told that this would be a prestige area, and I understand times are changing, but do you understand how we feel? We are feeling lied to. We are feeling that Medallion is just basically someone with deep pockets and they want to, you know, make the money by having higher buildings, more apartment buildings. And it seems like it's just not fair. And your word is not good. That's what's happening. Your word is not good.
Okay, so prestige, we don't think that building this apartment complex of high quality apartments is not prestige. We actually think it is prestige. So we're not, the form of development might be different, but we don't consider it not prestigious. We think it'll enhance the neighborhood, not diminish the neighborhood.
Okay. And my other question to you is for the Sundial residents, do you have a footage of when or if the road is widened, how far will their home be from the road?
Okay, and just before that question is answered, Amelia, I'm going to be muting you. We do have 12 more people with their hands up and 25 minutes left. So I appreciate your feedback. Thank you. And I am muting you now. So if that question can be answered, and we'll go to our next speaker.
Yeah, the preliminary design of the widening of Roslin Road, as John, the town's supervisor of transportation, has mentioned, it will be discussed at a future virtual public open house. So if you'd like to see the details of that design, we encourage you to sign on and get registered and participate. This way you can see the details. John, I'm not too sure if you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect message in that we would encourage you to come and participate in that that session, and that's where the details will be provided in greater detail on what is proposed to be contained within the ultimate right of way of a widened Roslin Road.
Thank you very much.
Steph, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but Andrew actually had a few questions with his comments, and I know we probably don't have time to answer all of them, but I was wondering if you can maybe answer the first two, just because I would like to hear the answer as well. Sorry, I know you're going through a thing right now, but he had asked questions and then made a statement afterwards, but I don't think his questions were ever answered. So I was wondering if we could get back to them.
Yes, so we are taking notes. We are recording this. We can respond to Andrew's questions as part of the package of all questions, like the type questions in the Q&A. So yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, so Sunita, there we go. You're unmuted now.
Thank you. I would like to allocate my 5 minutes of speaking time to have Andrew's questions answered now.
Okay. Bruno?
I don't exactly recall what the questions were. That was a few people earlier, but I think one of them was, why are we dealing with this application? It seems to be premature. Part of our review process for applications like this at the municipal level is to get feedback from the residents. So it's one of our milestones in the review of development applications. So getting out to the public and getting their feedback is an important milestone. So that's why we're out to the public to get their feedback. And that's why we've created an IMO page where you could submit questions and comments. The other, I guess, piece is we have a statutory timeline for review of these applications, and we're well beyond that already. So, the Planning Act dictates that we need to deal with applications as quickly as possible.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just, again, with respect to that application question, why is an application, and this is just for, I guess, overall knowledge, why is an application even submitted while it's missing these huge chunks of the puzzle? Why is it even accepted by the town?
Well, when an application is submitted to any municipality, it has to be received, and the municipality will review it to deem it whether it's complete or incomplete. Initially, when this application did come in, it was incomplete because some items were missing. And part of the review and process sometimes, goes through quick segments and things that slow down where, when comments are sent back to the applicant, they need some time for them to review and digest them and then have their consultants address it through resubmission. So it's just part of the review process.
And sorry, when was the application initially submitted?
2017.
So that review process goes on for 3-4 years usually, or?
Yeah, it could. Initially, like I said, it was incomplete and we were waiting for additional information. But the initial application did come in 2017.
Okay, thank you for answering that. I don't know if you had time to answer the rest of Andrew's questions, but.
We do have about 2.5 minutes. I see Andrew has his hand up again. Andrew, I'm just going to unmute you briefly if you want to repeat some of your questions.
Well, yeah, and just an observation for Bruno. So, you know, you just said like there's been a lot of time that's passed and there's statutory review period. So am I like actually understanding what you said correctly, where because you're behind in the process, that you're not willing to do the proper due diligence on the project? Because that's certainly what I'm hearing. And I think that's what a lot of this group is hearing. And that, like, my concern, why would we give Medallion the approval for this amendment that's posted all over Rosin right now? Why are we going to approve that without doing the proper due diligence? I certainly don't make decisions because I'm rushed for time. So I'd hope that my town, who is arguably responsible for my largest asset in my life, I'm hoping you wouldn't do the same either. So I'm hoping I heard you incorrectly, Bruno, but that's certainly what it sounds like.
Yeah, you definitely heard him correctly. The municipality would only bring a staff report to the planning committee with recommendations once we have fully reviewed the application.
So I think, like, arguably the consensus or the request from the group is that maybe we'd stop pushing this forward until such time as we do the actual proper review. But back to the other question, this one was for Medallion, and it's really about, again, the piece about, are you willing to put on the line some type of financial commitment to this project, to put in writing or put some guarantee to the residents, say, you will never sell this project off to, you know, someone who is directly related to the president of Medallion, such as Bleeman Holdings, and run down this project? Is that something that you're willing to do? And again, I have to say it, Medallion, I wasn't too impressed with your comment to say, well, it wasn't our intent to do that, but things change. And then to Rad, you had made this comment about there's some higher ups and some levels of government. I'd like to know kind of who you're talking to about they're forcing you to do this development, because again, I'd like to point out that we all know Medallion was approved for 6 buildings in Pat Bailey, 2 of which are built, both of which have vacancies in them. So is there really a need? Is anyone really forcing you to do this, or is it just very convenient that you're using that as a reason?
No. Nobody is forcing us to build anything.
Well, that's what you said.
No, I did not say that. I said that there are policies in place which encourage this kind of development on Ontario.
So why did you lie to the residents of Castlefields, and why are you pursuing this development if you're now saying that you don't have to, you just want to do it?
Well, it's not that we want to do it. And I don't think.
Well, neither do we. So problem solved.
Why wasn't
Great.
it?
We'll call it in.
If you let me speak, I'll speak it. If you don't want me to speak, I won't speak. And we can address this if you want separately.
No, I'd love to hear the answer about why you have to do it.
And so Andrew, thank you. I am going to put you back on mute. We do have 10 more, but thank you.
Yeah, so the answer is the industry, development, planning, municipalities, everybody is encouraged to intensify. It's not one developer, it's not one municipality, it's not the town of Ajax, it's all across Ontario. There's a movement, and has been for quite some time, and they're called Places to Grow, and there are all kinds of studies and policies which encourage, for a lot of reasons, for housing, for social mixing of housing, for efficiency of services and infrastructure, that intensification that happens in certain places. For us to ignore that, it would be an underutilization. When I say underutilization, I'm talking from the town's perspective and from every municipality's perspective, to ignore these opportunities. And then Rosin Road is arterial road, and to ignore that is to ignore that. It's not, and I don't think it's good policy. So we were permitted to do a higher density form back then. If the people at the sales office told you back then that higher form was townhouses, that may have been our policy at the time. Things change, and we see a better opportunity, not just for ourselves, and maybe townhouses is a better business plan for us, by the way, in terms of viability, but it would be an underutilizing, an underzoning of the property. That's I think where this discussion is heading. I don't think that anything we're doing here makes the land worse. I don't think it makes any sale worse. I think we're enhancing the property. I think we're enhancing the community. I think it's going to be a better place than it is today once this is all said and done. And that's my opinion.
So I guess, sorry for unmuting my line, but I again have to ask the question because no one's answering it. But what is to stop you from turning your back on this development in the future, like you turned your back on the development in the past?
Yeah.
When your intent.
Yeah. So Medallion generally has not sold properties or turned back on properties. Just, we've rarely I'm trying to think of a situation where we've actually sold our assets. In the last 20 years, we have grown our assets. It's all new buildings. It's all excellent buildings. I'm happy to give you a tour of every single new building built in the last 20 years across the GTA and all of Southern Ontario, for that matter. I'd be happy to show you the buildings, the amenities, the tenants, notwithstanding what you might hear on Ajax. I'll give you a tour of Ajax as well, so you can see with your own eyes. Ajax, yes, of course there's vacancy rates. Rome wasn't built in a day. This is not pre-sold condos where 80% of the building or 90% of the building is sold before we build them. We take a big, huge risk. There's what we call a take-up rate. It could be up to 2 years before a building is stabilized in terms of getting a certain vacancy reduction. In other words, it could take 2 years for the first building or the second building or any building we build to come to like a 5% vacancy rate or 3% vacancy rate. It doesn't happen that quickly. We wish it happens that quickly. It just doesn't.
Okay, thank you, Rad. We're gonna move on to the next person. Sharon. Are you able to unmute yourself, Sharon?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yes?
Yes, go ahead, thank you.
Okay. That I just wanted to address something that that gentleman just said, that this is making it a better place. We're the homeowners and we don't think that it is. So I think we want to make sure that it's clear to you. I am one of the original owners, and I remember coming in to buy my home and saw that empty lot right there. And I did query about that lot. And she did say that executive townhomes, it's not something that we would lie about, but we can move on. You said things are changing. I can appreciate a builder wanting to change due to times and whatever is going on. My problem is that you're proposing 1,322 units. That is more units than you sold in these homes that we bought. I would like to know why, when there are many rental units in an area, it's just trouble. I don't care what you say about making it beautiful, making it whatever. You're going to get a set of individuals in those buildings where it's just going to be trouble at Audley and Roslyn. I wanted to know why you're proposing so many rental units in one area. I could probably live with one. I don't want to live with any, but I want to know why that is. And I would like to know if you are having such problem renting buildings, why would you go with a rental unit? And also the fact that you are going to be building townhouses along the side of Mansbridge and Carberry and those areas, why can't those townhouses be sold? And I would like to know if you have rented townhouses in the past. I'm just having a real problem with this, because when I came over here to buy this house I lived in Richmond Hill for 10 years. My sister went to Great Gulf. I came here, I bought this one. I was going to Great Gulf, but I came here. I didn't expect these rentals here. I just think that there are too many units being proposed. I think that when you have rental units, I don't care about any parks, how beautiful they're going to be. They can go up to the community center from in this area and play basketball. In fact, anytime you get a neighborhood that have parks, you have renters, I mean, as I said, it's just going to be trouble. There's just no other way to see 1,322 rental units in one area. And I think that you should stick to your original plan, because I see and the valuation of the homes, once there is one incident in this area, that's all we're going to need. I wanted to know, and the other thing I wanted to know is, do you know the price of the rent that will be in these units? Because with one car garage, one parking spot for one unit, a lot of people in that unit has to be a couple to pay for an apartment. And usually that means 2 cars.
Yeah, so on Ajax, and Anna, I'm going to ask you if you can remind me what our parking requirement is at Pat Bailey Square.
off the top of my head, I think we're at, it's a lower rate than what is proposed here. I believe it is hovering around the 1, which includes visitors. So I think it's 0.8 for residential and 0.2 for visitors, but I would have to go back to the records to double check.
Yeah, and we're going much higher because it's a different neighborhood. We find that, I mean, we're not gonna, we're in the business of making rental viable. We're not in the business of not making it viable. And we will rent it out. We always do. It just takes time. That's part of the business model of rentals. Like I said earlier, it's not condos and it's pre-sold and everybody moves in on the day the building is finished. Rentals is a build it and they will come proposition. We've not had problems with our parking rates in other projects. This is the standard that we do, and actually a higher standard than we do in let's say, the other project in Ajax. And as Bruno said earlier, we market to people that don't need as many cars. So if you're looking for 2 cars or 3 cars and a 1-bedroom unit, don't shop at our place. We don't have anything for you. So
well, I think in that state,
you wouldn't be occupying a unit in our building.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but if you're saying that you're looking for people without a car, then I think it's low income that you're looking for, because people that do have cars, they tend to higher income individuals tend to own a car. But how could you say that you're looking for someone are you going to say that you have 2 cars you can't rent here?
No.
Is that what it is?
Low income, no. Yeah, if you have 2 cars and we don't have 2 cars for you, then we don't have a customer. That's how it works. And if you want a 2-bedroom unit, like a lot of these 2-bedroom units, just to understand, a lot of these people are retired that we deal with. A lot of these people are single, divorcees, singles that never want to get married, widows, widowers, and young people either in school or just getting a job in the neighborhood or the community. And none of those people that are at Pat Bailey Square, for example, are low income people. We don't have a facility there for low income.
So these units will not be to low income individuals.
No, this is market rental. That's the business we are in. We are in the business.
Okay, and why aren't the townhouses up for sale?
Okay.
I mean, I feel really bad about my neighbors that are facing these homes that are going to be townhouses that are rented.
I do not measure rental versus owners as different classes of people. So to me, to answer that question,
I'm not classing, I'm just talking about money here, just the same thing you are. I'm saying, why is it that the townhouses aren't sold where these other people who have bought their houses on Mansbridge, especially Carberry, and those homes, why wouldn't they be facing owners also as opposed to renters?
Because you're classifying a renter being a different human being than an owner. And to me,
the fact that these people,
that's not how you design communities, and that's not how you design
renters. No, I'm classifying the fact that we're going to try and sell our homes, and they're selling them to, you're facing renters. Nobody's going to buy your house for that.
Okay,
that's I completely disagree with that opinion.
Okay, then. So when everybody will sell the homes to you.
We have gone over time, Sharon. We do have a lot of people left with their hands up, and I do. I know that virtual open houses, this isn't the ideal way, and it's a very different way for us to be conducting open houses. I do apologize for cutting people off. We have just over 15 minutes left, and we have a lot of other people with their hands up. So Sharon, I'm going to mute you. Thank you for sharing your opinions, and I'm going to move to the next person who has their hand up, who is Rasiga. So I am unmuting you, Rasiga. Your mic, you should be live now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of concerns I want to raise. The first one is, have you guys thought about the congestion that this development is going to add to the GO train? Because I use the GO train every morning. It is impossible already to find parking. It's impossible to find a seat on the GO train to go to work. So all these, you're proposing 1,300 units. Where are all these people going to work? Most people that live in Ajax, that live in this community, work outside of the town. They use the GO train to travel to work. How are you guys going to support that? That's my first question that I want answered.
I don't know if that's addressed to a traffic engineer. I'm not technically able to answer that question. It's a traffic engineer question.
Yeah, so we could take into the consideration, no, the GO train capacity was not part of our analysis at this time, and is not something that was in the scope of the traffic study looked at by the town or the region.
Okay, so GO train capacity or the parking was not looked at in this development, which seems like an oversight on your end. My other point is you guys also mentioned that plans change. You guys originally said it was going to be townhomes, now it's buildings. The shadow study was completed in 2010. I purchased my home in 2012. I was never told that there was going to be a building proposed. I was never told this might be a possibility. How is it that you guys are doing shadow studies for buildings in 2010, but in 2012, you're unaware that these buildings are a possibility? Can anyone answer that?
Bruno, maybe you want to speak to the timelines of receiving applications and going to.
The shadow study was prepared when it was prepared. It was, prepared by Medallion's consultants, and then submitted to the town in 2017. So that's pretty much all I can speak to. If they were prepared in 2010, obviously Medallion had contemplated what we're, something that's similar to what we're seeing today, right?
I appreciate you trying to answer this question, but I think this is more, I would like to hear from Medallion because they're the ones that promised this. It's going to be townhomes. They never mentioned buildings. When you already had a shadow study done for buildings in 2010, 2 years later, I'm at the office looking to purchase. That is not brought up. Why is that?
Because it was probably a study that we were doing, contemplating changing the property and have not yet decided to change the property. We have many, many properties where things are changing. Sometimes we do townhouses, sometimes we do high rise, sometimes we put things on the drawing board and get it going. Some things we put it on hold. It all depends on which project it is. We may have done some preliminary studies earlier and then reopened it up again without making an application. Once we make an application and meet with the town, that's when it gets serious. That's when the rubber hits the pavement.
And just to add to Rad is that with the resubmission, there will be updated shadow studies that will be able to be viewed by the public as well.
I don't really care about the shadow study. It's the fact that you guys had the ideas of this building, but it was not addressed to potential homeowners who I guarantee would have changed their decision on buying a house in this community if they had known the possibilities that you guys were exploring at that time. Moving on, my next concern, it's very minuscule when you're talking about the problems or the concerns of the community, but Anna, you mentioned that you guys want to add a pickleball court to the park. If you guys, it really exemplifies that you don't understand this community or the demographic or even the surrounding community, because if you guys did, you would know that a community in Whitby brought up concerns about adding a pickleball court to their local park, which resulted in town hall meetings like this, which taxpayers pay for. So it's very small, but you guys don't understand the community. I want to know how many of you guys live here to really understand the impact that all of these changes you guys are proposing will bring.
So to answer your question, thank you for that. So we actually, just to advise of the conceptual park that has been proposed, through working with the town, it was recommended we come up with a concept plan and a list of items to incorporate into this large park. And we were provided with a list of potential things from the city, which was, I'm not sure if all of those will be included or what will be included. It was just a conceptual plan based on a list of items that may be considered by the community and to be able to provide input onto what is actually will be used in the park. But it was just conceptual with a myriad of items to include to show what could really be included and what can activate the park. So it's not by any means pickleball, tennis. I mean, it is really up to the town to decide what items they want in their own park. and based on their community input.
Okay, I have also two more points. Someone mentioned that Medallion is not associated with Bleeman Holdings, which, as somebody that just does a simple Google search, that's very hard to separate the two. Your VP of Medallion Corporation is Aaron Bleeman. And Bleeman Holdings has so many lawsuits right now just concerning the fire that happened at 650 Parliament Street. So it's very hard to distinguish or separate the two when clearly there is a connection there. So I don't appreciate you guys saying, oh, we're not the same. We're not associated with them. I just find that to be lies, just like how you guys propose those townhouses. And my last concern is, Vad, you mentioned that you guys are not forced to build, but you guys are encouraged to develop. Is the $60 million that you got from the federal government to include affordable housing on the Bailey buildings that you built not encouraged? You guys, it just seems like a money grab. It just seems like you guys are trying to get money. And how do you explain that?
Yeah, okay, so you're talking about the CMHC financing on the federal program, which it's not affordable. It's mid-income housing, actually. And the federal government didn't give us $60 million. It's a loan guarantee for $60 million. And that's a program that the federal government has in place for certain projects. We qualified because we have a good reputation for building, and that's how we won that competition, actually. Others have as well in London, Ontario, and we were the ones who won in sort of the Toronto area. And it's a grant that provides more affordability than usual, in that it provides guarantees some rents, I guess, for mid-income households. So is it a money grab? No, it's not a money grab. We're not getting money. It's a loan guarantee and a loan interest guarantee. And sorry, yeah, the question about what we do on Bailey?
Oh, sorry, Rad,
yes.
I did. I muted Rasiga.
Okay.
Would you like her to restate the question? We do only have 10 minutes left.
If you don't mind. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna.
It was the one for Rosin Road.
Okay. Rasiga, go ahead.
It was more of a statement. It was that, to me, it looks like you guys are just trying to build apartments and get money from the government. I know you mentioned it was a loan, but to us, that's what it seems like. You're not making this community's enjoyment of life better. You're not making our property like be worth more. You're actually like gonna make everything worse for us. And I don't think you guys should continue lying to your customers.
Anyway, you heard me. I don't think we're going to make it worse for you. And there's all kinds of communities all over the place where there's mixed use, and it actually makes a better community, not a worse community.
I also have one more question.
No, I'm sorry.
Do any of you guys live in this community?
You, because we're gonna.
That's my last question. Sorry, I just have that one last question. Do any of you guys live in this community?
And now I'm.
Other than the council.
Nope, I don't live in this community.
I don't live in the community.
We develop in many communities, so I can't live in all of them, unfortunately.
Okay, so we do have about 7 minutes left. We have a lot of people with their hands up. We're going to take Michael and Tasso, because those are going to be probably the only two we'll have time for. So I do encourage everyone else who still has their hands up, please put your questions in the Q&A chat. Or you can also, as I had said, submit your questions via the IMO page or via email to Bruno. So I'm going to go to Michael and unmute. Okay, Michael, you're ready to speak.
Quick question, was a market study done? And if one hasn't been done, why wasn't it done? Meaning, is a market study meaning, why are you putting a building here? When did you make a presentation to Ajax?
No, a market study was not done. We're in the, like I said earlier, we're in the rental business. There's few of us that do it. There are very few developers that do it. We are the market study. People like us that build buildings. There's Greenwood, there's us, and a couple of others in the GTA, and there's others outside the GTA. There are no experts other than us in doing this, and we feel it's a very good market. We feel it's an improvement to our community. We're happy to build here, and we think it's going to be a positive input into this along Rosin Road in this community. As was the other one in Ajax, which we did not do a market study there either, and it's actually becoming quite successful. We're actually planning to build 2 more buildings there in the very near future.
So again, okay, to add to that point, so you're building more and more rentals. So is there actually a need for rentals in our specific location?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Have you done an actual study to see that we need rentals in our location?
There is. There are government.
Oh, no. Okay. Have you provided that study to anybody?
No.
So there isn't. So you're just saying that there's a need.
Well, we know there's a need. There's you read the newspapers. There's needs all across Canada about housing. There's a housing shortage all across the big cities in Canada. Actually,
I'm specifically asking about Northern Ajax along Roslyn. I understand it's an arterial road, whatever, blah blah blah. But is there an actual need for rental housing at that site?
I believe that there is. Are we going to build all the buildings in one day? No, of course not. But we think there's a need, and we're not going to risk building all the buildings in one day, just like we're not risking building all the other buildings we have in our portfolio in one day. We build them as the need arises.
Okay, so you originally had plans to put in executive townhomes. At that point in time, or townhomes, let us leave it at that. At that point in time, when you said you're going to put in townhomes, were they already considered to be rentals, or were they going to be residential or for sale homes?
I don't know if we went that far with them, because this land was.
It's a very specific question.
I know, I understand, but I don't know back then if we were even contemplating the tenure or the number of townhomes or.
No, but you told us that you're going to be selling executive townhomes. So
is that what they said? Okay, I wasn't aware that that's what they said at the same.
You already said that you knew that.
I don't know. Sorry, I made a mistake when we designed things. This wasn't how'd I put it? There was no application on that site. So when we said townhomes, we meant the built form. I don't know if we necessarily talked about the tenure.
So you don't know if, okay, so can someone from your organization provide to us whether or not they were going to put in rentals or the actual for sale homes that they said they were going to?
There's nobody, we can get back to you on that, but I don't think anybody at this meeting right now knew the answer back then.
Okay. And so the change in direction, I'm assuming it is financially motivated. Are these financials being provided by the provincial or federal government or town? Like, can we get a look into the actual financials that took place with regards to this change in density?
There's no financials. The government is not involved in the financials at all in this project.
So of your own volition, you decided to move from executive townhomes to high density?
Yes.
Okay. And why are you trying to rush through this 15-story building? Because I noticed that you say that that's the first one that you have plans on building.
I don't know if it's the first one. But
perhaps you could provide some clarity. We made an application and then we had an open house and we have come back.
Well, excuse me, when was this open house? Because I've been here for a long time and I can speak to also with some of my associates, and we never heard of anything about an open house.
Scott, do you remember it was 2018 we had a public?
It was May of 2019 when we had that open house. It was at the community center, but yeah, it was May 2019.
Okay, so this is just regards to the recent amendment.
So right, so we engaged with the public. Medallion hosted an open house, and we presented a plan. And the plan originally did not have 1 hectare park We have worked with the town and have come back with a revision to the plan, which includes the park and as seen as a community benefit and a request to incorporate more green space. So we have come back with a revised plan, and that's why we're here today to present the revisions to what we originally made in our application.
Okay. And actually, I forgot your name, ma'am. Sorry.
Your last question, Michael?
Yes. She had mentioned before that there was a possibility of low-income house applicants being put into the buildings. She did when she was specifically asked, she never really gave a full answer on that. So I'm kind of confused with the high vacancy rates. Is it possible that Medallion is sitting on these properties, waiting for some sort of subsidy from the government? Is that the plan?
No,
I don't know. I'm asking.
that's not the plan. That's not the plan. The plan is there's no, okay, so everybody understands here, we cannot open the doors and have 300 units occupied in one day. We've added in our cash flow and our performance on all our projects a period of time that it takes to occupy the units. We are in a build it, they will come business. So to market our project effectively is only 2 or 3 months before the first occupancy. Unlike a condo where you sell everything way before you build it, and by the time you finish building it, everybody moves in. In rentals, the opposite. In the rental, we have to show people, we have to walk them through, they see their suites, yeah, we like it, we'll pay this much, I'm moving in November. That's how it works in the rental building. So this talk of high vacancy rates, you guys are looking at a snapshot in time. Those buildings will be occupied because we're building 2 more buildings there.
Okay, thank you, Rad. So we are at 9 o'clock, but we are going to take Tasso, and then we will wrap up the open house. So Tasso, you should be able to speak now.
I did. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's time. I think really, I know I've got limited time here. What I'd like to do rather than answer or ask questions, rather, I think they've all been asked, and we probably received what we imagined would be a likely responses, is kind of use the next couple minutes just to express my opinions and feelings, many of which have already been echoed by some of the others on this call. And I'm sure the people that work for the city of Ajax or the town of Ajax, I think my comments are probably more directed to them, mainly because I think they are supposed to, in some fashion, act as, representatives for the people that live here. I think when this first became, more public than it initially was, that there was a larger scale development planned on these vacant lands a couple of years ago, I think immediately it was obvious what happened. People in these communities, both Sundial and on the Castlefield side, kind of banded together. Several thousand people signed a petition, et cetera. And, amongst all the feedback, we see these common threads, all of which kind of distill down to one fact. And that is, in my opinion, that everybody, both on the Castlefield side and on Sundial side, has a serious concern about the future of the quality of where they live. And, for instance, the most common theme is, the issue of Rosin Road. I, for one, live on Carberry Crescent backing onto the pond, and, and I'll speak to pre-COVID times, and God willing, there'll be post-COVID times very soon. You couldn't, if your life depended on it, in the morning and in the evenings, get onto Rushworth and, ultimately out onto Roslyn. Roslyn, everybody that lives in this part of Ajax knows, is backed up bumper to bumper from Audley out to Harwood every morning. And the inverse of that, in the evenings during rush hour, the same is true. So the traffic is already at a complete standstill, and hence the concern about additional development, and I'll forego the fact that, walking out my front door and, living in the shadow of a 15-story building is obviously extremely unpleasant. And to this common, consistent question about why, we're going through this, amendment application process. And again, the answer to that is obvious. Medallion's developer, their job is to create optionality and, economize their land as much as possible. So that's kind of a no-brainer. But from a pure living perspective, and again, I go back to 2 years ago when the first kind of community engagement, occurred, you couldn't drive 100 feet without seeing a for sale sign. There was this panic on both sides of Roslyn, and the selling, was furious in this neighborhood, which did the obvious to home prices. You just based on basic, supply and demand laws, prices declined fast and furious, and a multi-year construction project, which will add tremendous congestion to this area, in an area where you don't see an apartment or a condo building or any version of a high-rise building anywhere within sight. Is a reason for that. And I think that's what my concern is, and what a lot of people's concern is that it just, I understand the logic of you own the land and you want to do the most you can with it, but it just doesn't fit. And that is the root of my concern. This isn't Pat Bailey Square where you've got commercial properties and other high rises in that general area. This is all single family dwellings. And I, for one, am imploring the people that are on this call that work for the city of Ajax, whether you're elected or otherwise, that we, one way or another, are subsidizing or paying for salaries to listen to people's concerns. It is going to be a nightmare to live on either side of Roslyn Road. This area is already incredibly congested and is difficult as it is. And this is, that's why you feel a lot of the type of feedback. It's almost like salt in the wounds. And I won't waste everybody's time going over what the builder said, because I was an original owner here, from, way back in the day. That is really ultimately the root of my concern, is that, the development on these slivers of land, and they are very small, in particular, the one on the southwest, it's like 100 yards by 100 yards, packing that many people into such a small space, and traffic studies or not, the place for them to exit if there was a development would obviously be out onto Roslyn versus Rushworth or those other little tiny streets, is just going to create a complete nightmare. And I think that's obvious. And the reason that they're probably not exiting onto Roslyn is because there must be some issue as it relates to traffic being able to flow out onto the road with how many streets and the lights and whatnot. It's just, the whole situation is unpleasant, and, we appreciate everybody's time and allowing our voices to be heard. But, I, for one, am hopeful that, all the feedback from the community, which will continue, I'm sure, is in some way, provided some kind of relevance, because the notion that, this is going to do nothing but improve people's lives in Northeast Ajax, in Sundial and in Castlefields, is quite frankly just not based in reality. And it's not practical to assume that's going to happen, because we know it's not. And nobody on this call would want, if they were living in a home, to have a 8 or 10 or 15-story building erected 100 yards from their front door.
Tasso, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your comments. And I also want to thank all the other attendees and residents who took the time out this evening to be part of this open house. As I had mentioned, please, if you would like to, if you have more comments or questions, please go to the IMO page. There's an opportunity to provide them there, or email Bruno directly. I want to say thank you to Medallion and their consultants, Councillors Lee and Khan, and town staff for the dialogue. And with that, I am going to wrap up the open house and say good night. Have a safe and good evening, everyone. Thank you.